Let's bring you more then on the sporting events that are being affected by the coronavirus, and a number have added to the list today. All professional football in the UK has now been cancelled, as well as England's Premier League. The EFL is now off too, so too matches in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. UEFA has postponed the Champions and Europa Leagues. It's not just football that's affected. In Test cricket, England's tour of Sri Lanka is now off. In golf, the Players' Championship is cancelled, the Masters is postponed, and closer to home, the London Marathon has been postponed until October. So the coronavirus has put the brakes on the world's sporting schedule. All professional football suspended, as we say, for 3 weeks. The Wales v Scotland rugby match tomorrow, that's been postponed. As I said, the London Marathon delayed as well. We're joined by the former FA executive and ex-government special advisor, Julian to reflect on what this means for different sports, Julian. And we were just actually looking, weren't we, at the fact that FIFA is looking at postponing international matches. It feels like a lot of different governing bodies have arrived at this decision today.
Yes.
I wonder why.
Well, I think if you look at the numbers, it's inevitable now that both our own domestic bodies in Britain and international bodies are taking this extremely seriously. After the WHO yesterday declared that this was a pandemic, absolutely quantifying it in a very different category to what we've seen before, it was inevitable that these governing bodies are going to be taking these kinds of decisions, some independently from the government.
Unilaterally, I mean, this is not in line with government advice. And you wonder how the government feels about that, but we don't know, do we? Looking at pictures this morning from the Cheltenham Festival, where tens and tens of thousands of people standing up in a grandstand, you don't see that sort of press of people anymore. That was allowed to go ahead.
Yes, well, that was an extraordinary sight, but if you listen to what the government scientists were saying yesterday, they are saying that in open-air environments, the risk is less severe. And in fact, if I hadn't been here tonight with you in Sky, I would have been at Craven Cottage watching my team Fulham hopefully beating Brentford. And in fact, before it was called off, we were wondering ourselves whether to go. So I think there's an element of uncertainty there and risk that people were keen to avoid. And that will continue for all kinds of open-air and other types of sporting and cultural events.
On the subject of risk, is it an existential risk for some of those, I mean, football clubs, for instance, but it applies to different sports too, who are on the edge financially anyway?
Absolutely. And whilst at the top of the Premier League, they can take that kind of hit, and it will be a pretty big hit most likely. As you get lower down the leagues, the impact becomes even more severe. So let's remember, beneath the Premier League, 52 of the 72 Football League clubs are actually operating at a loss. This season already, we've had the demise of Bury last August, you may remember. Macclesfield and Southend have been charged recently because they were unable to play their players. They live a pretty perilous existence financially for a lot of the season. And I hope one of the outcomes from this will be that whilst we're displaying solidarity to our fellow citizens, I hope that football itself will display the same solidarity as well towards those in lower leagues who are unable to bear the burden of this kind of crisis.
Is there a difference? Because we note that these are matches postponed rather than played behind closed doors, which was the other option. But if you look at some sporting occasions, I mean, the obvious one being this summer's Olympics, you've got athletes who have trained, blood, sweat, toil and tears for 3.5 years. You sense, I mean, obviously they would like to play in front of a packed stadium, but given a choice, they'd just rather have the chance to get a medal, even if that's in front of an empty stadium, surely.
Well, I think that you'll get different opinions. I think certainly for games like football, I mean, it is so an essential part of the football experience is the crowd, the environment there, the entertainment, the value it generates, the emotion it generates. And I think if you talk to most of professional players, they absolutely acknowledge that football is nothing without the fans. There may be other sports where that isn't the case so much, and I've heard a lot of conversations today about whether golf can muddle through with behind closed doors, as it were, without, and maybe others too. But I think most people, they want to compete in front of big crowds and to make it the big occasion.
For obvious reasons, we're talking about professional sport here, but actually we neglect, don't we, mass participation sport, what teenagers and grown-ups are doing this weekend. And there's no sense yet, I don't think, in which anything's been scrubbed there.
No, at this stage, not. No, I mean, I think the FA and others have been saying it below the professional levels. Other games are going on, and even in semi-professional rugby, for example. And tomorrow I might be going to watch, a championship rugby match as an alternative. There are lower league semi-professional games going on throughout the rest of the country as well. So it's a good opportunity actually for fans and others to get involved with them, with local teams, and go and watch them too. So that should not be neglected. It's an opportunity to participate. Yeah.
You could always fire up that extensive collection of DVD copies of Fulham's greatest hits. It won't be very long, will it?
Oh, no, that's cruel. That's cruel. But sadly rather true.
Julian, thanks very much indeed. Thanks for coming in. It's just time for the weather.